Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Welcome to Chris Waddell's Nametags Chat Podcast. Today I'm with Bob Babbit, who is the co-founder of Competitor Magazine, co-founder of Challenge Athletes Foundation, is a member of the USA Triathlon Hall of Fame, a member of the Ironman Triathlon Hall of Fame, has been a friend for a long time. And Bob, thank you for joining us. Let's talk about CAF.
Hi, Chris. Such an honor to be on with you. I mean, anytime I can go on with a guy who's won 4 gold, 5 silvers, 2 bronze, 11 Paralympic medalists, you're a legend, my man. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to chat with you.
You know, this is just what's blowing me away. I mean, I think Challenge Athletes has done so many things, and I've gone to your triathlon in October, which is one of the coolest events, but I didn't realize just the scope of how much you're doing. I sort of realize it anecdotally in some ways, in that it seems like every athlete I talked to has been helped by Challenge Athletes. But in your press release for 2020, for the Tokyo Paralympics, over 60% of Team USA has received financial support from Challenge Athletes Foundation. 60%.
Yeah. Along
their athletic journey. This support has been for over 16 years and totals over $700,000. 128 members of Team USA, plus funding for international athletes. When you started, did you have any idea that, I mean, those are crazy, 60% of the athletes who will compete in Tokyo for the US?
I always tell people that things happen for a reason, you know, I back then I was publishing Competitor Magazine, and we were covering running, triathlon, cycling, mountain biking. And this guy comes to Kona named Jim McLaren to do the Ironman. And he had been a football player at Yale, 300-pound offensive lineman. In 1985, he's taking acting classes in New York, on his motorcycle going to class, gets hit by a New York City bus, thrown 90 feet in the air, dead on arrival at the hospital. He lives, loses his lower left leg, and comes back from that to run a 3:16 marathon, which is incomprehensible for somebody on a walking leg, not like a C sprint like you see now. We're talking one step ahead of Captain Hook. I mean, this is what this guy was doing. So then he set his sights on the Ironman Triathlon World Championship. And as you know, I've been involved with the Ironman since the earth was cooling back in 1980, when there was 100 of us at the starting line. And then Jimmy is coming over here, and I got to meet Jimmy at the Ironman, and he goes 10:42, which was the top 20% of everybody in the race, you know, missing a freaking leg below the knee. And at that point, he was sponsored by Budweiser. He's traveling the world. He's a one-legged guy that everybody can identify. And 8 years later, he's racing at a triathlon in Mission Viejo that I was racing the same day. And a van goes through a closed intersection, hits the back of his bike, propels into the pole. A guy who's already an amputee becomes a quadriplegic. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. So myself, and I had Competitor Magazine. Jeffrey Esikow was with the Tinley Company, which was the clothing company that sponsored Jimmy. And Rick Kozlowski was an event producer with events that Jimmy had done. So the three of us got together, and I was like, we need to do something for Jimmy. From covering wheelchair athletes through Competitor Magazine, and I think you can relate to this, that when I would interview athletes like yourself or Jim Knob or other athletes and say, what's the worst part about your new life? It was invariably, I'm 30 years old. All of a sudden, here come mom and dad back in my life. I was an independent person. Now I'm not. So our goal was, okay, we want Jimmy to be independent. Let's raise $25,000 through a little triathlon. We'll buy Jimmy a van with hand controls to give him independence. That was it. That's what we wanted to do. We raised 49, thought our job was done. 3 amputee women come up to us, and they're like, we came here because of Jimmy. We have a relay team here to support Jimmy, and he's our hero. But did you know if you get injured, your health insurance will cover a walking around leg or an everyday wheelchair? Nothing to do with sport is covered because insurance companies consider sport a luxury item. A luxury item, not something that'll keep you off medication, not something to make you feel good about yourself and feel great about your current wherever you are in life. So that's when we got our 501(c) and decided if anybody needed a piece of equipment, training, or travel to stay in a game of life through sport, that CAF would be there forever and a day. And now it's been 27 years, 28 years actually, $134 million we've raised. We've sent out 35,000 grants to athletes in 73 countries and 104 different sports. I was just checking, it was 103. We just gave out grants in para ninja, right? Para ninja.
All right.
They're trying to get that into the Paralympics. It's ninja for para athletes. What the heck? Why not? So that was it. And who knew that this thing was, we brought in Virginia Tinley, who is worked for Jeffrey at the Tinley Clothing Company, to be our CEO, executive director person. And we were in a little shack that was condemned. The termites had eaten the thing and it was falling apart. And, we didn't really know what we were getting into, but we knew there was people out there who needed our help. And so every year, more and more people have found out about what we do. And it's been the greatest gift ever to follow people on this journey and seeing Rudy, who's now 32 years old. We started working with him as a double above knee amputee when he was 7, 8 years old. And now he's going for his 5th Paralympics and he's 32 years old. It's, that to me sums up the journey.
It really does. But Jim's journey as well, right? I mean, you went quickly through Jim's journey, 300-pound offensive lineman who ran a 3:16 marathon.
Yep.
I mean,
Reinvented himself.
Like that's crazy. Because I remember being in high school and playing soccer in high school, and we're running like 6-packs around the soccer field, and could see the football players, and they were running 10 yards. Like they were running 10-yard sprints. We're running around the soccer field numerous times. And like, this is totally different. That guy turned around and ran a 3:16 marathon, but he ran a 3:16 marathon after he'd lost the lower part of one of his legs.
Exactly.
Is then the next part. And then that guy went and did a 2:42 Ironman, which is what, 2.2 miles?
10 hours and 42 minutes. So he's 10 hours and 42 minutes at the Ironman World Championship. The cutoff time is 17 hours. The winners at that point were doing 8.5, right? So he was, 2 hours behind the best athletes on the planet, but way ahead of the cutoff time of 17 hours.
And what's the breakdown there?
It's a 2.4 mile swim,
right?
Ocean, followed by a 112-mile bike ride. And when you're a big guy like Jimmy, that's a big wind block out there. And the wind is howling out there on the Kona coast, especially on the way to Hawaii. And then it's a marathon. And by the way, it's only 100 degrees at that point of the day when you're starting your marathon at 2, 3 in the afternoon. Yeah, it's crazy time. Yeah. And Jimmy just excelled. And it was watching him reinvent himself. And the interesting part, they told him after he became a quad, you will never move anything from the neck down, right? You will never. And I was over at his place and, with tears in my eyes, as he's getting up out of bed, sitting at a recumbent bike, right? And riding the recumbent, then walking to the down the hallway with, using the walls, and walking, doing repeats up the driveway, and then getting into the pool and walking in the pool. And I'm like, yeah, he's not going to move again. Yeah, that ain't happening. They underestimated what Jim McLaren was all about. And he's the one who said, and I don't know if you ever saw the film Emmanuel's Gift.
I did.
Yeah. So what he said in that film says, the silver lining of my accident, if I don't end up as a quadriplegic, Emmanuel doesn't find out about CAF and change the destiny of of people with disabilities in his country. I mean, that's Jimmy. That's what Jimmy represented. It was like, I know. Says, is this fair? No. Is this something that I should happen? Should I have had a second accident? Should I have had a first accident? No. But there's nothing I can do about it except make greatness out of it. And that sort of became our mantra. How do you make great out of crap?
Well, but he was a human guy as well, where he had the second accident and he said, I don't I don't know if I want to do this again. Like after saying that his first accident was a gift, that both accidents were a gift and an opportunity to give back, to give to people like Emmanuel, to demonstrate what's possible. But that human part of going, it was a gift, but I already did it.
Right.
Do I want to do, I mean, like I've said numerous times, it's a gift. Would I want to do it again? Would I want to run headfirst into a pole and be paralyzed from C2, C3, whatever it is? I don't think,
No,
I certainly wouldn't choose that.
no.
And none of us chose it, but and he went to some of those depths, right? Back on that same course is where he had that kind of aha moment of like, you know, there was some cocaine involved, it sounded like, right? Where he had some
Jimmy,
issues, and
Jimmy's
where
had
his
his
greatest
struggles.
triumphs were is where he was then going to his biggest depths and try or in some ways where it was his greatest enlightenment too, where he realized, okay, this is the journey that I have to go through. That's part of it for CAF too, right? That you're not creating heroes necessarily. You're helping humans along that human journey, right?
You're understanding that there are highs and lows. I mean, Jimmy certainly had his lows. He went off to Hawaii, and I thought we'd never see him again. I mean, I thought he was just going to roll off the pier and be gone. And Jimmy had, as someone who is, when you're in a wheelchair, you're sitting on your bladder, you're sitting on, you have a lot of issues. And at some point, there were numerous points where Jimmy's like, I don't really want this anymore. This is, yeah, it was, the silver lining was that Emmanuel came over to meet me and he changed the world. But at the same time, each day is a struggle. Each day I'm doing a triathlon just to get out of bed. But he was, like you said, he was so human, he could share that rather than just put on the happy face. And I remember talking, it was Glenn Hartrick, one of our athletes who was a age group triathlete. Car made an illegal U-turn. He became paralyzed. He'd been doing Ironmans and been doing marathons, and he wanted to come back and do Ironman again. But he said he realized really early when he was in the hospital bed that if people came in and he was, God, I don't know what I'm going to do. My life is over. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm paralyzed. He said, I became the barometer for everybody around me. If I was bummed, they were as paralyzed as I was. I needed to be able to say to them, hey, I'm great. Everything's awesome. I'm really looking forward. I'm going for a bike ride. I took the wheelchair from the hallway of the hospital and put Strava on it. And I'm setting course records in the parking lot. That was important for him to do. And to know that he had his partner, he had somebody he could confide with and cry with and share those dark moments. But he felt like there was other people that he had a responsibility to his whole group that was following him, that was involved with him, to show them that he was okay, that he was going to be okay, and that they can move forward, even if there were times where he didn't feel okay. And his whole line was, I got to live life through the windshield, not the rearview mirror. I can't control all that. And it was that always made an impact on me.
It's an interesting situation, and I think it's empowering. I mean, for the individual, you're the one lying there in the hospital bed, and people come in to support you and, hey, all right, it's all going to be okay. And you can see the look of anguish, the look of worry on their face, and it totally flips it, where you're the one, and you don't know what's going on. But you're like, no, it's going to be okay. But it's back to, in some ways, what Jim was talking about, in this sense of the potential isolation and the potential immobility after breaking his neck, and the pain, right?
Right.
Being in constant pain and worrying about these things. But he did something that was kind of interesting. I mean, I remember seeing him at one of your events, and I don't know if I had met him when prior to his accident that made him a quadriplegic. I remember seeing him on television, but I don't know if I'd remembered him. But he started studying, right? And studying the wounded man,
Yes.
like, the Bible and the classics and Oedipus and Job and all of these things, and trying to answer that question for himself, which in a lot of ways is not necessarily just his question, is it? I mean, it's the question that sort of unifies all of us. We're all wounded on some level, right?
Yeah, no question.
Whether it's perception or not. And that willingness to go into that depth, that willingness to try to answer in a lot of ways life's questions, is some of what brought challenge athletes into the depth of what it is. It's not just cookie cutter. It's bringing people in and dealing with the person, and probably, like you're talking about, not necessarily just the individual who's receiving a prosthetic or a wheelchair or whatever it is, but the family.
The family is essential.
Well.
Everybody around. You think about Rudy. I mean, his mom was the one who, when Rudy's double above knee, well, they did 15 surgeries to try to save his legs. He had a flap of skin behind both knees. It was called pterygium syndrome, and he had cleft lip and palates. And so when he had his leg, when he finally, at the age of 5 or 6, had his legs amputated, it was his decision, right? His parents tried to save the legs because they didn't want him to come back when he was 20 years old and say, well, why didn't you even try to save my legs? So they tried it, 15 operations, didn't work. And finally he's like, cut these things off. And they got him into swimming. And so mom was the one, because when they go see the prosthetist, the guy would be like, listen, you're a double above knee amputee. You'll never really walk. You'll never run. You'll be in a wheelchair, right? And mom would keep calling and going, the prosthetist was Michael Davidson. Michael, or Mr. Davidson, when will Rudy run? And he would reiterate, he's basically on stilts. He will never run. He'll be in a wheelchair or he'll be in a walker, period. So finally, Michael tells me this story. He said, finally, rather than talking to him on the phone, I said, could you please come in so I can tell you this in person? So Michael walks into the waiting room and Rudy is doing a handstand on the walker. And Michael goes, at that point, he goes, if this kid wants to learn how to run, I better figure it out. And that changed, seriously, that was the moment that changed everything. At that point, no double above knee amputees had ever run a step. And so Michael said, Rudy became my collaborator. I'm trying to figure out how to make legs for this kid that won't break, that he can run and skateboard and be a kid. It wasn't about running. It was like, how can I help this kid be a kid? So he says, Rudy's 7 years old, 8 years old, and he'd come in after shattering another set of legs, jumping off a wall or jumping off a roof, whatever the heck he was doing, skateboarding. And he said one day Rudy comes in and he had cracked the socket, right? And he's like, so Rudy, what happened? He says, well, I was skateboarding and I was trying to jump this curb. And so Michael says, I'm holding the socket and I turn it upside down and all these Tootsie Rolls fall out. And I realized that my collaborator's an 8-year-old kid and he's helping me change the world here. But that was the thing, is the two of them were on a mission, because it wasn't just about Rudy. It was about that next kid. So when Rudy and I ran a mile together as part of the San Diego Marathon in 19 minutes with his Lego looking like legs, right? With all the different colors and all the titanium, 19 minutes. Well, eventually he got to sub 6 minutes for the mile. And all these other kids that you see now who are running as double above knee amputees are because of Rudy and Michael. Michael is Rudy's prosthetist. To this day, they still work together. And it's, Michael was the one who, and because of mom was the one who said, hey, my kid needs to run and you better figure it out. And he did. And that changed everything. I mean, people forget that, listen, you're very early in the process of somebody being injured and coming back and being an athlete, right? Hasn't been happening for 50 years. That's what, 25, 30 years, maybe.
Yeah.
So this is all, you guys are all pioneers. We're all pioneers in figuring out how do we figure out how to get back in the sport and get back into life. How can we develop the equipment that needs to be there to make that happen? So it's been a fun journey watching all this.
And what an amazing gift, right? I mean, you look at Rudy and you look at what he had to go through, and he's a kid who just wants to play and just wants to have fun and go 100 miles an hour. And luckily he has a prosthetist who's willing to help him in that, and willing to help him because one, the legs are expensive. The kid keeps breaking them.
Yes.
I used to get in trouble for breaking my braces when I was a kid, right? You know, the doctors, how can we keep this kid from breaking? My parents are like, he's a kid. This is what happens. They're going to, but the prosthetics are a whole different story than the braces that you have on your teeth, right?
Well, his mom was so responsible for that, because what she did, you weren't taking videos with your iPhone back then. You had a video camera, and they lived in a trailer, right? Dad was a cook at a truck stop. It's not like they were a family of means. So Rudy's standing at this tetherball court behind the house, and mom's got her beta cam or whatever the heck it is, and she's filming Rudy, and Rudy's legs that he got were state issued. They were held together with bungee cords, right? Seriously, they were bungee corded and then strapped, leather straps onto his stumps. So he's holding this leg, and the mom is making this video to send to the high-end prosthetic makers to basically say, help me. And so Rudy's going, could you please help me and give me better legs? These are a piece of crap. And he throws it on the ground. And we still have that video. But that's what mom did, sending this off to these, multi-million-dollar prosthetic companies and saying, I need legs for my kid. And luckily, between Michael Davidson and the prosthetic companies, they were providing him, because they understood that he was sort of NASCAR. He was testing out the products that were going to help the next generation. So think about this. So Rudy was, finally, he was the only one getting legs. And so back in the day, doctors would tell a kid or a parent, your son or daughter is 3 years old. They're a double above knee amputee or a double below knee amputee. It makes no sense to get them legs now, because they're just going to outgrow them. And they're $15,000 a piece. So you should wait till your child is 14 and stops growing. Okay, so imagine your first 14 years of PE, and you're running around with 2x4s attached to your knee, right? You are the last kid picked. Your self-image is, I am a piece of crap. I am not an athlete. A sport is not part of my life. And what I'm really proud of through CAF, it became, hey, you're 3 years old and you need prosthetics, get them now, right? 2 years from now, you need another set, get them now. Our partner, OSER, they've been amazing, because it's way more than just a piece of equipment. It's what between your ears. It's what you're feeling about yourself, how comfortable you are in your own skin, right? And also just the way the other kids look at you. When Rudy started swimming, his whole goal was to beat a kid with legs. Says, I want to beat a kid with legs. And he remembers, he can tell you the time of day, where it was, to the second when he was swimming and touched the wall, and the kid on his right touched just after him. And all this kid's friends were standing above on this pool deck going, you lost to no leg boy, right? And Rudy was going, I want more of this. This is what I want. I want No Leg Boy to dominate these guys. No Leg Boy, RoboCop, all that type of stuff. Well, when you got street cred because you're beating people, all of a sudden the bullying and all the rest of that crap goes away. And that's what the byproduct that we don't quite understand is that you are a kid, and not just a kid, but you're a kid like everybody else. You're not the last one picked. Maybe you're first one picked because you're faster than everybody else.
And that's like going to the triathlon, you see, because Rudy at one point was the only kid.
Only.
And now you see so many kids with their prosthetic legs, with these tiny little prosthetic legs. I mean, it's like the equivalent of like baby shoes kind of thing,
Yes.
practically, right? Where, but they're legs that fit them, and you see the kids running. And you know, I remember having the message in the hospital after my accident was that you're effectively fragile.
Right.
Like, you know, you're gonna skin breakdowns. This is what's going to happen to you. Your skin's going to break down. And it's like, so don't do anything. Make sure you do your pressure
Put you in a
relief.
bubble, put your kid in a bubble, right? And hold on to him. So, well, I think that's another thing. If you look at people from my generation, if you were an amputee, you never wore shorts. You wore long pants. You hid everything. And one of my favorites, we were doing our San Diego Triathlon Challenge. Two-time Ironman world champion Chris McCormick was a guy I've been trying to get there for years to come do it. He came to the event, and as you know, there's 150 challenge athletes there. There's legs lying everywhere. There's wheelchairs everywhere. For that 1 weekend a year, kids who live in Omaha, Nebraska, and are the only kid in a wheelchair, the only kid who's an amputee, they're with kindred spirits. All of a sudden, they're not a freak. They're like everybody else. I had a mom tell me that. She says, for 363 days a year, my son feels like he's a freak. He comes here and he's like everybody else. And we forget how important that is. So Macca comes to do the triathlon and he says, listen, this was a life-altering experience for me. I'm coming back next year and I'm going to bring my 2 little girls. They need to see this. They need to meet these kids. So the following year, Macca comes and does the bike ride down the coast. And the $1 Million Challenge bike ride finishes at La Jolla Shores Park. We've got all of our kids there who are going to be putting medals on all the 120 riders, right? Greeting them from their 620-mile journey. And, you know, Chris is part of that group. So his wife is there with her 2 little kids. And we've got hurdles set up and tires, and all the kids are just playing, right? Little games while waiting for, you know, the riders to come down. And Chris McCormick's wife says to one of her daughters, says, honey, why don't you go play with the other kids? And to show you how the world has changed, her daughter goes, I can't play with them. I don't have a magic leg like they do, right? We're talking about the kid's got Scooby-Doo on his legs. He's got Spider-Man. He's got Superman embossed in his legs. Kids are jealous, going, I want that. And I remember interviewing this woman, 17-year-old girl in Philadelphia, and wearing a skirt and had her prosthetic leg. And I said, tell me about your prosthetic leg. She goes, my prosthetic leg makes me different in a good way. It makes me stand out. And if we've had any impact on that, on people feeling good about themselves and saying something like that this makes me different in a good way, then that the journey has been worth it no matter what. But that to me is really, really the essence of it. How good you feel about yourself because you're different in a good way. There's nothing, you stand out. And if you look at every commercial during the Olympics, you saw Scout Bassett and you saw Jessica Long and you saw athletes that stand out. Our athletes stand out. Chris Waddell stands out. That's important.
Well, it's part of the human condition, I think. And the other part of it is that, I mean, it's your mission, right? That removing the barriers to an active lifestyle.
Yes.
And basically helping the individual through that or the active lifestyle, helping that individual to live as fully as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm paraphrasing here, but I mean, that's what we all hope for, right, in a lot of ways, right? How did this go from the raising money for Jim's van to becoming as big as it is? I mean, you've got Rudy over your right shoulder, and you have Bill Walton over your left shoulder, who has to be one of the biggest, heroes of CAF and one of the biggest proponents of it, right?
So a lot of things happened that were, one was because of Scott Tinley, 2-time Ironman world champion. He had met Robin Williams, and Robin loved riding his bike and loved being with the pro athletes. And he came down originally to do the Malibu triathlon with Rudy swimming and Robin riding a bike and Scott Tinley doing the run. They were Team Braveheart. Rudy used to carry a little business card. A Braveheart is a powerful weapon. That was his mantra. Right? So that group, that trio came to our San Diego Triathlon Challenge 11 times. They were a trio at our event. Well, so now media that might have just ignored this silly little triathlon to raise money to buy prosthetics, wheelchairs, and hand cycles, they have a sense that a Oscar award-winning actor and comedian, Robin Williams, is going to be at this park. So every media crew on the planet is at La Jolla Cove. And my favorite Robin story from those is, one, Robin loved riding a bike because he could be a little invisible. When you're on a bike, you're just another geek in Lycra, right? So two things. So Rudy is getting honored up at Nike with what they call the Casey Martin Award. But Casey Martin was the golfer who had to go to court to be able to use a golf cart. And he's a Nike athlete. And every year they give out an award for people who are inspirational to the disabled. And Rudy was receiving this award, which came as a $25,000 grant from Nike that goes to Rudy. So Casey Martin gets up to present the award. He goes, listen, it's named the Casey Martin Award, so I'd sort of like to give it out. But we have a gentleman who performed last night in New York, and he flew all night so he could be here to present this award to Rudy. Robin comes bounding on the stage, and he goes, listen, people keep telling me that Rudy's a challenged athlete. To me, a challenged athlete, some 300-pound guy trying to squeeze into a pair of Lycra. That's a challenged athlete. Rudy isn't a challenged athlete. So, and then he brought Rudy on Oprah with him, right? Then Rudy was on the Disney Channel. Then every time at San Diego Triathlon Challenge, the weather guy is there. And why is the weather guy there? To do the update on the weather from La Jolla Cove, because Robin Williams is there. So he comes up and goes, hey, will Robin do a soundbite? And it's like, Robin, are you okay doing a little interview? And he goes, is it live? Yes. Yeah, it's live. It's live? Yeah, I'll do it. So putting a live microphone in front of Robin Williams is like putting a raw meat in front of a lion. So here's Robin, and the reporter goes, Mr. Williams, how are you going to feel at the end of this 56-mile bike ride? He's like, is this live? Yeah. You know how I'm going to feel? I'm going to feel like there's a river of sweat like Niagara Falls running down the crack of my ass. It's like, wait, is this live? Oh, thank you. And he walks away high-fiving everybody. But that was Robin. And Robin led to, one year we had Robin Williams, Will Ferrell, Jim Carrey, and David James Elliott from Jack, right? As one of the agents said, we were one star away from a nervous breakdown. But all these celebrities were out there, and Will Ferrell and Jim Carrey ran a 1:33 half marathon on a hilly course. And Robin did the 56-mile bike ride. And total cred, street cred. And we actually honored Will at my endurance awards, my competitor endurance awards, for running that half marathon and running a 3:56 at the Boston Marathon. So it was great for everybody. The athletes the celebrities got to meet our athletes and understand why they were important. And Robin was so motivated by Rudy and all of our athletes. So it's that all of that was huge. And then Emmanuel's gift, having Oprah narrate the film, and Jim McLaren and Emmanuel received the Arthur Ashe Courage Award, right? And you had Matthew Perry hosting the ESPYs, introducing Oprah, who introduces a 13-minute feature on Jim and Emmanuel narrated by Kiefer Sutherland. Then it's Emmanuel and Jim and Oprah hugging at center stage, and LeBron James and Bill Walton and everybody in tears with a standing ovation. There was a lot of special moments that led to a higher profile for CAF and people finding out what we did. And at the end of the day, all of that helped to create what we have today.
What was Robin's initial connection with Rudy? Like, why did he get so emotionally involved with CAF as a result of Rudy?
Well, originally, Robin, the Escape from Alcatraz Triathlon up in the Bay Area, went right by his house. So he met Wendy Ingram and Scott Tinley and a lot of the pro athletes, and nothing made Robin happier than to be cutting up with those athletes. He just loved being with those athletes. And, Scott was going up from San Diego to do the Malibu Triathlon, which was really, one of the first events that focused on stars, and it had Tom Cruise and Matthew McConaughey and Jennifer Lopez. And so Robin was on a team with Rudy and with Scott Tinley. And that became Team Braveheart, that eventually, that for the following year, came to San Diego Triathlon Challenge. And so that photo of Rudy coming out of the water and on all fours going over and tagging Robin, that, every media outlet, not just on the West Coast, but all over the country, that was a very special moment. We call that the hot corner. And it was a hot corner for a reason. It was one of the most beloved actors and comedians, and Rudy Garcia Tolson, who was a star in his own right at that point.
Well, and I mean, what it sounds like is that Robin just sees the humanity in this, right? Just sees Rudy as this little kid who's had to struggle through, but also who just, funny enough, becomes a hero to Robin,
Right. No
in a lot of
question.
ways.
No question. He talked about him as a Superman. Rudy's Superman. He can do anything. And they began. And actually, it's funny. It's like Robin. I'm like, Robin. Rudy really is just so excited to be your friend. He goes, Rudy only likes me because I'm his video game pimp. I get him all the new releases. That's the only reason he hangs out with me.
Rudy did say something to that effect, that he got a gigantic box of video games from Robin, and he was all hooked up. But I would imagine there was a little bit more. But it's interesting to see those kinds of stars, right? These people that you see on television that have so much distance from the rest of us, who then come and say, no, this is the important part. What this kid Rudy is doing is the important part. And it's, so when you first did that triathlon as a fundraiser, how many people did you have? Because it's huge.
God, we raised $49K. We probably had, I don't know, 35 to 50 people there, something like that. It wasn't very big. And it was just, in fact, to be honest, I don't know if we had any permits when we did it. We must have permits to do the La Jolla Cove, but the bike ride, we've never blocked off any roads. So it was just, you ride up the coast and come back, and then you go for a run and come back, and then we'll barbecue. So it was pretty casual those first number of years. And then it just, over time, it got bigger and bigger. It's funny because people who came the first couple of years, and then all of a sudden it's like, the crowds are so big, they can't really see what's happening on the main stage. We better get a Jumbotron. So we get a Jumbotron. So now people can see. So now there's a Jumbotron, and if we have a Jumbotron, we've got to have a VIP area for people to be able to see the Jumbotron from certain areas next to the finish line. So it just, started over time. Things just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and raising more and more dollars. And by creating it, by Robin bringing attention to it, people realized the need. People saw that there were a lot of athletes who they needed a hand cycle, they needed a racing chair, they needed prosthetic legs. All of that became more and more, our athletes became more visible. And when they become more visible, their need becomes more visible. That's what's so cool about Paralympics, is all of a sudden, just like, we had London, and then we had Rio, and I think, Tokyo is going to be great, because there's going to be way more coverage than we've ever had before. And some of these athletes are just like we saw in the Olympics. They're going to become household names coming out of the Paralympics.
Which was not the case that long ago. I mean, it's when I was competing, I mean, even London, you talk about it as a transformational time, but still in the US, I think we had 4 hours of coverage.
Exactly.
Of the Paralympics.
It's embarrassing what was going on, because we were watching it in London. We were in London, and we're like, oh my God, what they're doing. Channel 4, what they did over there, which is so great, is before each event, they'd have a little diagram showing what the challenge was that the person was dealing with. Because this is confusing stuff. The classification,
especially swimming, right?
Swimming, track and field, all of that is just, it's crazy. You just can't figure it out. But they did a great job, because I would watch Rudy swim, and there's like Rudy, and he's missing both legs, and there's a guy missing an arm, and there's a guy with all 4 limbs, and then okay, fill me in on who's a guy on the end there with all 4 limbs, and he looks like he's 35. And who are these people? But it was just very confusing there for a long time. I think it's gotten better, but it's still confusing with all the classifications.
No, it's so important to be able to tell that story. But then also, I mean, you're talking about London, where they went one step further in telling the story, right? They had a stand-up comic at the end of the night, at the end of the
Yes.
broadcast. Because I mean, like you, I mean, I grew up with like MASH, right? And it
Yeah,
was kind of, this is war. And if you can laugh, then we're okay. Then we're sane, right? Then we're,
exactly.
and I think that was part of it, that there was so much distance in the Paralympics. One, because you didn't get a chance to see it. And two, if you did get a chance to see it, it had to be strictly this, well, this is inspirational. This is so great. This is somebody overcoming, which to me, overcoming is one of those things that reinforces the barrier in
Mhm.
between, reinforces the distance. Oh, you've overcome your disability. It's like, no, I'll wake up tomorrow
You
and I'm
get
going to be in a
right,
wheelchair. I
right.
I know that.
Yeah. 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 What you're doing is you're challenging yourself. You're challenging yourself in the course, right? Yes, you're competing with the other people, but can I be faster than I was yesterday? Can I jump higher than I did before? Right. All of that, to me, that's what the purity of sport. And we chatted about it before we went on. The thing that hit me the most, and this wasn't even Paralympics, it was Ironman. And it took a long time. So when Ironman in 94, a guy named Dr. John Franks in a wheelchair
Mhm.
wanted to come do Ironman. And their feeling back then was, if we have a person who swims, uses a hand cycle and runs and uses a racing chair, well, if someone says they can't swim, can they use a windsurfer? Can they use a paddleboard? Are we opening up Pandora's box? And it was like, no, let's just, you come up with swim, same cutoff times for the swim, the bike, the run, hand cycle, long seat on the hand cycle, and racing chair for the run. And that's what the rules are. So in 94, John Franks came over and he did make the cutoff time for the bike. In 95, a guy named John McLean came over and he didn't make the bike cutoff time as well. So then people start saying, well, maybe we got to change the cutoff times. Like, no, level playing field. That's what everybody wants, level playing field. Those hand cycles were 30 pounds. They had to get lighter, figure it out. So then in 90, 94, 95, 96, John comes again and he misses the cutoff time again. But they wanted to see if someone could actually do the whole race. And as you and I both know, they weren't going to have a problem doing the marathon
Right.
in 2 hours. Average person's going 5. So John goes off and does the marathon. He
John
finishes.
McLean, this is right.
John McLean, yes, gets under all the cutoff times, and they put a medal around his neck. And his brother goes, "You need to take that off right now. You didn't make the bike cutoff time. You can't keep that." So in 97, he came back and he made off the cutoff time. And now we're going, okay, now we're moving forward. Well, then 98, Carlos Maleta, Navy SEAL, shot in the back in Panama, paralyzed from the waist down. David Bailey, motocross world champion, making $750K a year, is the top supercross rider in the world. He gets paralyzed jumping something that probably shouldn't have been jumped. And the two of them come over 98. And now it's the Navy SEAL against the motocross star. This is a movie waiting to be made, right? And everybody knew Carlos and everybody knew David. And so you looked at these two guys and it became less about the disability in the wheelchair and came down to these two guys want to kill each other. And to win this race, they will do whatever it takes. And Carlos that year went 10:55, which the year before we were worried people couldn't make the cutoff time. 10:55 would have won the first two Ironman races overall, right? 78 and 79. He would have won the race. So now that went away with, can we make a cutoff time? It's like, now it's time to race. So 99, Carlos wins again. We come over to 2000 and I say to Carlos 2 days before, I'm like, Carlos, I just think it's going to be a race this year. And he goes, you can think that, Bob? It's going to be over early. We're going to pay and save hill, the first hill in the course. He's going to get dropped so bad. And I'm like, wow. So anyways, that's exactly what happened. Okay, they come out of the water. David's ahead. Carlos goes by him like a moped, heads out to the turnaround in a place called Javi. And then David catches him. And at that point, they're like 6 miles from the finish of the bike, and David flats. And Carlos, being a good sport, hangs with him for a little bit, but not too long. Then he takes off, and he's got about a 5-minute lead. And they're coming through town, and Carlos has a 5-minute lead. And David's wife and mom, and it's his mom's birthday. They're standing on the side of the road and they're giving him the golf clap. They're basically, good try, honey. It was great that you tried to beat him again, but you got your butt kicked. And David had spent his whole winter, 150-mile rides on his hand cycle. As he said, Bob, if I cramp out there, it's not like I can get out of a chair and go call somebody. I'm stuck. And he get back to the house and wife would find him passed out on the floor of the bathroom, pictures of Carlos Moleda around the house. He wanted this guy, right? And so they're heading out towards what's called the Natural Energy Lab. It's a 4-mile loop. It's 16 miles into the marathon. You drop down, and when you come out, it's 10K to go. And in the week leading in, like 3 days before the race, David was out there in his racing chair. It's 100 degrees. He's poised above the Natural Energy Lab. Doesn't really want to do that 4 miles right now. It's 90-some degrees, but he knows, you know what? It's going to come down to this. I need to know every crack, every pebble in this Natural Energy Lab. He goes down and does it. So on race day, the lead now is 2 minutes when they get Natural Energy Lab. They go down into the Natural Energy Lab. They come out. David is side by side with Carlos. And you can see the tears. You can see the tears. And we have a 6-foot photo of David Bailey in full flight. And the quote is, like, why walk when you can fly? And he just had passed Carlos, his full extension. He's flying in his racing chair. He gets to the finish and wins, right? We've had this trio of races, and he has finally beaten Carlos Moleda. And I'm like, David, you want to get a massage? And he's like, no, I need to wait for Carlos. Carlos comes in, and they both are wearing these grimy gloves that wheelchair racers wear. They touch gloves, and then they embrace. And I see David say something to Carlos. And as they're rolling away, I say, Carlos, what did he say? And he said, thank you. And I was like, what? He said, that's what I said. He goes, thank you for pushing me to a level I wouldn't have reached on my own. And to me, that was the epitome of what sport's all about. It wasn't about the disability. It wasn't about the chair. It was two great athletes who wanted to kick the other guy's ass. And that's what makes the Paralympics so great. You know that there's athletes right now, Justin Fongsava, the javelin thrower, sure. He knows everybody else who's going to be a threat to him. It's not like he's going over there to pick up tchotchkes, from Japan. He's going over there because he's a world record holder and he wants to win a gold medal. And he knows the guy from the Ukraine and the guy from Russia and the guy from Czechoslovakia. He knows how far they throw, and he wants the gold medal, and he does not want them to get it. Now, they push each other to be great, but that's what I love about sport. He wants to be better than them. That's what it's about. So that's the purity of it, that it's, inspiration, motivation, that's all there. But at the same time, the purest part of sport is competition. And these guys want to be the best. You wanted to be the best. Look at, you don't come away with 4 golds, 5 silvers, and 2 bronze by going, I'm just going to go out for a little training on the slopes today. No, you were pushing it as hard as you could. You were doing the weights. You were doing everything you needed to do to be the best you could be. And that's what we're seeing in Tokyo. These guys have had an extra year. People are going to be flying.
It's going to be really interesting. And what's also interesting about this too, I mean, you talk about Carlos and you talk about David too, right? That people are going to choose sides.
Absolutely.
I'm for Team Carlos. I'm for Team Bailey, whatever it is. And it's like, no, I want the underdog. I want the guy who hasn't won. I want him to win. This other guy's won the whole time. He can't win again, and that to me is the evolution of disabled sport, of the Paralympics, is when you can say, it's okay if somebody wins. If I root for somebody, I'm not rooting for the whole movement. But you talk about marathons, you talk about Ironman.
Yep.
There's some dark moments out there. There are those moments where you just don't know if you can continue. And back to Jim McLaren, where he was talking about that in terms of his recovery, right? That his recovery in those dark moments was partially remembering those marathons, remembering those times in the Ironman.
Drawing on the Ironman. He knew. And to me, just like if you look at any sport, rivalries, right? Michael Jordan and the Detroit Pistons, you have rivalries. And if you look at our endurance sports, when you had Dave Scott and Mark Allen and Paul Henry Frazier and Aaron Baker, they couldn't like each other. And going back to wheelchair racing, Jim Knob was an Olympic trials pole vaulter, who you know, and Jimmy got into wheelchair racing, and he was like, how do I make this a sport? You know, no parent is out there going, boy, I hope my kid grows up to be a wheelchair racer. There, right? And he goes, but I want to figure out how to make this a sport. And he talked to Dwight Stones from NBC and said, I need to make this a sport. And he goes, if you want to make it a sport, Jimmy, someone has to wear a black hat and someone has to wear a white hat. You've got to create rivalries. And so Jimmy was like, I'll wear the Dalmatian suit. I'll wear the black hat. I'll go to the papers and go, I just won this race overall. Where's my prize money? And why should it go to the runners? I was on the same course, you know? And who's this Craig Blanchett guy? He's got no legs. He's got an advantage on me. You know, that's ridiculous. I mean, he would talk smack because he knew we understand rivalries. We might not understand wheelchair racing or hand cycling or the para triathlon, but we do understand two people who don't like each other, who want the same prize. That's what the beauty of sport is you push each other to be great. You hug each other afterwards, but you didn't go there to get the silver. You know, if you're going to be on the podium, you don't really want to be looking up at anybody. Right? You would rather be looking down on people. So, you know, to me, that's what it comes down to, is we want rivalries. And that's what happened with David and Carlos. People were riding and running, going, go David, go Carlos. They knew who those guys were, right? They weren't just two guys in wheelchairs. They were the stars of the race, just like Dave Scott and Mark Allen were.
Well, and that's the cool thing. And then you also see that now 60% of the Paralympians that you guys, Challenge Athletes, has helped 60% of these athletes, which, you know, even some of the athletes that you guys have helped, like a Famita Ayambeku, was saying that it took her years to wear shorts, to wear a skirt. A Beatrice Hatz, same kind of thing. She was 17 years old before she would wear shorts in public, right? And this is sort of demystifying it, right? That, oh, you don't have to wear something cosmetic on your prosthetic to make it look like it's another leg. It's like, no, this is what it is. And if you take a look at it, it's pretty darn cool too, because it's designed for performance.
Yes.
How has it evolved for you in the time from the beginning of thinking, okay, we're going to get Jim McLaren a van, to now 2021? Because you've seen this arc, and you know, and it was an interesting time prior to this as well, right? Like the time of, like, you know, wheelchair basketball in 50-pound hospital wheelchairs, and racing in 50-pound hospital wheelchairs, and souping up those things, you know, going into your garage and go, oh, we can dump the upholstery, we can add some different tires, we can, you know, do whatever. How have you seen that arc, and what do you see in this next generation of athletes?
You know, what's fascinating to me is what I've seen, obviously, is what Oser has done with prosthetic legs is just unbelievable. And then in conjunction with Nike, the two of them work together to create this sole that goes on the bottom of the running. If you think about it, you've got a carbon fiber leg, and if you're running on a carbon fiber, you're going to wear that out. Well, with the, you know, the sole that Nike created, that originally was called the Sarah sole, because Sarah Reinertsen helped develop it, that sole you can have spikes on it. You can have treads on it to run off-road or run on-road. So it makes the prosthetic last so much longer. But then the whole thing with the fit is, that's what people don't understand. It's like, well, why does that thing cost $15,000? Because it's made specifically to you. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is that it's one thing for someone to go on vacation and gain a pound or two. But when you have a prosthetic leg and your leg volume changes, all of a sudden your leg doesn't fit. All of a sudden your leg can come off. All of a sudden, or it's too tight.
Or you can't get it on. Yeah.
You can't get it on. So athletes have to be so cognizant of what they eat, what they drink, because that fit is essential. And the same with, a sled hockey sled, having a sled hockey sled that's not a borrowed sled hockey sled, but something that is built specifically for you. One of the stories that you love, we're working right now with a young man who's Landis Sims, is a quadruple amputee baseball player. He's missing both hands and both legs, one below and one above, and loved baseball from the very beginning. Like 7 years old, when he was 7, a buddy of mine named Eric Cochran, who's a videographer for both Discovery Channel, shoots Shark Week, he shoots National Geographic Adventure. He would happen to be at a veteran softball game and sees this chubby 7-year-old kid missing both hands and both legs, talking smack to the military guys. He's like batting and going, dude, can't you put it over the plate? What's wrong with you? And this was this kid, Landis Sims from Indiana. And, talking to Eric, I'm just going to film this kid. There's something here. I'm just going to get, so he's been filming him for 7 years. And, so what ended up happening is we took him to the MLB network. And so his prosthetist realized that he was batting with his 2 stumps like this, right? So this prosthetist came up with a socket to go on the bat so he could put his stump in so he could extend his arms. So what's happening when we talk about technology every single day, as we go outside of the realm of wheelchair racing, hand cycle racing, to mainstream sports, football, basketball, baseball, these prosthetists are having to figure out, how do I make a leg that doesn't just go straight, but can cut side to side? And how do I come up with a socket that goes on the bat? So, Landis throws and catches with his glove. And his quest became to make his high school baseball team, which he did as a quadruple amputee. So every single day, with the help of technology, things are changing. And well, you'll love this. When Landis was just out here in San Diego, he ended up being invited to the Titleist Performance Institute. And Titleist works with golfers and they work with baseball players. And they have electrodes and all this different stuff hooked up to this kid. And he realized that I shouldn't be batting lefty, I should be batting righty. And he's hitting well lefty, now he's hitting the crap out of the ball righty. But as these trainers and physiologists start looking at our athletes, and as our athletes start moving into more CrossFit and all the mainstream sports that are out there, baseball, football, basketball, equipment has to be adapted, right? And we were at the TPI, at the Titleist Performance Institute, and the trainer there for Titleist and the scientist is on the phone with the prosthetist back in Chicago, talking about how do we adapt the legs so that he can get more movement side to side. How do we do this? So we're in the evolution stage. Every single day we are learning more and more. I mean, you saw how much the hand cycles changed and racing chairs changed and wheelchair basketball chairs changed. We're just at the beginning. There's going to be so much more. And that's what makes it so exciting, just seeing what sports our guys are going to be doing next.
Where do you see it going? I mean, you've seen it come so far, but yet we're still at the beginning. Where do you see it going? And what do you see the role of challenge athletes continuing to be as it moves forward?
Well, I think our role our mission is to help people get the equipment, training, travel, et cetera, to stay in the game of life through sport. And that won't change. We want to make sure that we're there to, if somebody says, I want to play baseball, or I want to play basketball. I want to play high school basketball and I'm missing an arm. I want to play hockey or stand-up hockey. How do I do that? That's, they come to us with, I want to do this. And we come back with, this is how we think we can help. So to me, our job is never ending. We need to help these athletes be athletes and help them achieve their dreams. And to me, this right now, we're a year late, but the Paralympics is the culmination of this last 4 years of these athletes who have sacrificed so much, and especially during the COVID times, to get their workouts in, to eat healthy, to do whatever they could do to get to the games. It's a pretty exciting time.
And you've helped world champions. I mean, you're talking about Carlos Melita, you're talking about David Bailey. We mentioned Famita, people who are at the top of their sport, and Rudy, but it's not necessarily just about the people who are at the top of their sport as well, right?
That's the tip of the. So Rudy's was a Pied Piper. He was one whose parents, this is actually the perfect story. So Jake Frank, double above knee amputee from South Dakota, Haven, South Dakota. And his mom a lot of times it's a mom. Mom had video of Rudy from the Disney Channel running. And, Jake was in a wheelchair. And mom would take this video that she had and take it to, to the prosthetist and say, I want this for Jake. And they'd be like, lady, I don't know what the hell this kid's doing, but there's no way. He's a double above knee amputee. He's on stilts. He'll never run. So anyways, this visiting prosthetist comes to South Dakota named Peter Davidson. And the mom shows him the video and goes, I want this for Jake. And he goes, no problem. Rudy's prosthetist is my brother. And 3 days later, Rudy's on the pool deck with Jake. And then we had Robin Williams present Jake with a set of running legs. And the other side of that is, here's dad, whose kid has been in a wheelchair his whole life. And dad, so much of a relationship with the father and son is playing catch, tag, all that type of stuff. Not part of their existence. So now here's dad, son gets out of the chair, pops his legs on, and is playing tag with Robin Williams on the grass. And dad is like, you could see the light bulb going, I can play catch with my son. I can play tag with my son. This is the coolest thing ever. Another aspect of that is Jake Frank is running along and he, sees this guy, Scott Stackman, a guy from New York. And we have had in the past a spot at the Ironman World Championship. And the only way you could get in the Ironman is you qualify or you potentially purchase a spot from CAF. Biggest fundraiser gets a spot. So that year, Scott had been the biggest fundraiser and he knew nothing about CAF. All he knew is he wanted to go to Ironman. So, but part of the deal was when you bought a spot, you had to come to our San Diego Triathlon Challenge. So now he's standing there when Robin Williams is presenting this set of legs to Jake Frank, who now is playing tag with Robin on the grass. And Jake runs over to Scott Stackman and takes Scott's hat off his head. And next thing you know, Scott is chasing Jake on the grass and thinking, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I need to bring this charity to New York and we will do really well supporting this charity. So he reaches out to Virginia and says, Virginia Tinley, and says, hey, I'd like to do a gala in New York. And this is early on, this is like 13, 14 years ago. And she goes, what do you like, a luncheon? No, I've rented the Waldorf Astoria and I'm doing a gala. And he now has raised over $22 million for CAF through that, which started with him chasing a kid named Jake Frank on the grass at La Jolla Cove, trying to get his hat back. And that's what that led to. But to me, that's Rudy led to Jake, right? And Jake led to the next kid. And that's what it's, and every one of our kids understands that. And Rudy will tell you, yeah, the 2 gold, 2 silver, and a bronze are great, but his real medals are the kids who are, right now, going to Paralympics, Haven Shepherd, right? Haven Shepherd and so many of these other kids are there because of Rudy. They came to our swim clinics, and same with our triathletes. And that's my favorite part, is just seeing our kids giving back to the next generation. And that's why I think our kids grow up so fast, because they understand it's not just about them. It's about that next generation. And seeing all these kids like Haven Shepherd, who's been with us since she was a little girl. She's lost both legs. That story where she was, right. Haven Shepherd lost both legs. So the suicide that the birth parents were doing. And then she was adopted by family from Missouri. And now she's at the Paralympic Games, swimming at the Paralympic Games in Tokyo. So that to me it's not where the journey starts, it's where it goes.
Right. And it's that community as well, right? I mean, you're talking about Absolutely. The kids who become role models, but then they also have peers. Like, you talk about Rudy, where like Roderick Sewell and Rudy are best buds. And they told me the story about Rudy basically getting Roderick into the pool because they're both double amputees. And Rudy said, hey, come on and swim. And Roderick's like, no, I'm totally scared about this. And Roderick had his arms around Rudy's neck, and yep. Like Rudy swam with him and he went, this is the coolest thing ever. And then these guys, they have peers, they have friends, they have a community. It continues to grow, but it sort of grows in an importance that you never would have imagined. You never would have imagined that you'd be friends with Robin Williams, that at that Malibu race
Yes.
that Rudy would have met David Duchovny, and then he would
Right.
have swam in David Duchovny's pool
Cool. Yep.
during COVID because he couldn't find
Couldn't
another
find
pool
another
to
place to
train
swim.
in.
Yeah. Yeah, come swim in my pool. Yeah. Yeah. That was really, really cool. That was it was funny because Matt Futterman is a writer for New York Times and a friend, and did a book called Running to the Edge based on a film that he came to see the premiere of the film. I had invited him to that, and he ended up so he's a writer in New York Times, and I invited him to, because Rudy and Roderick were living together in their training for Paralympics and living together in Brooklyn. How cool a story was that? You know, two guys going for the goal of going to the Olympics and no legs, living in New York, one of the most inaccessible cities on the planet. So that was cool. And actually, the funny part is Rudy and Roderick and Emily Gray living together in Colorado Springs. Rudy's missing both legs above the knee. Roderick's missing both legs above the knee. Emily's missing one leg all the way up to the hip. So basically, you had three athletes and one leg between the three of them living in a house together. And we were out there doing some video stuff. And like Rudy's got his black lab, and the dog is walking into the couch. And I'm like, Rudy, what's wrong with your dog? He goes, oh, he's missing an eye. I said, wait. You got three athletes, one leg, and a blind dog. What is that, a country song? What do you got going here? That's a sitcom. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Wow. So now you will do the event again in October, the triathlon.
October 22nd, 23rd, 24th, Community Challenge, San Diego Triathlon Challenge, Amputee Run Clinic, open water swim. It's a 3-ring circus and so much fun.
And so that is going to happen in.
Oh yeah.
COVID is not an issue right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, right at this point, based on if we were doing it today, we would be doing outdoor events. Outdoor events are okay. $1 million challenge will be happening. That's sold out. I think it's 120 cyclists going from San Francisco to San Diego, 625 miles or 620 miles, 7 days. That's a 5-star. That's a $12,500 price tag, but each day you're
so they have to raise $12,500 in order to get a ticket into riding from San Francisco to San Diego.
Yep. And each day you finish your ride and your masseuse is waiting for you. Your bags are in your 5-star hotel room and your mechanic is tuning up your bike for the next day. So, and you're riding along with hand cycle athletes, with amputees, and you're really getting a sense, your community, you're part of the community. And that's really a very special event.
It's an amazing, and it's spectacular. It is, the California coast is just absolutely beautiful. If anybody wants to do it, there are a couple of hills along the way.
Yeah. It's not, people think, oh, you're starting in San Francisco, go to San Diego, it's just all downhill. You should be fine. You're starting up here, you're going down here. It's no big deal. Just, take the brake off and you'll be good. No.
Good thought. No, it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
And how many people do you expect, and what kind of a fundraising goal do you guys have for this year?
Well, we normally raise 1.2, 1.3 through the bike ride, and usually about 1.1, 1.2 through the triathlon and the community challenge. So that'll be the goal, to try to get in that ballpark. So we're, our team did an amazing job during COVID. We didn't lay off one person. Our team worked incredibly well remotely and created just great opportunities to engage with our athletes. Our team realized right away that, as it's one thing if I can go out and just go for a run around the neighborhood, go for a bike ride. But if you're a wheelchair basketball player, a quad rugby player, or any type of, sit volleyball player, gyms are closed. Your social group, your fitness partners are gone for you for a year. So our team worked with a company called Skills to create little workout kits to send to all the athletes. So they had stretch cords, they had little ladders, and created videos. How do you practice wheelchair basketball in your apartment? Our team is spectacular. And it's one of the things we're proudest of, is so many of our people have been with us forever. I mean, obviously myself and Jeffrey and Kaz have been there all that time, and Virginia's been there from basically the beginning. And everybody, when people come and work with us, I think unless they go off and start a family or they move somewhere else, they don't leave, because it's a pretty cool place, a pretty empowered place to be.
Well, it's also going to be amazing to get the group together after such a long time. And obviously the people who work there, but then bringing all the athletes in, and
No question.
it
It's the
is,
best.
it's a spectacle. It's an event. It's a celebration. I mean, as you said, it's a three-ring circus. It's all of the above.
All the above. Yes,
Yes.
it's great.
And anyone that you want us to look, you've mentioned a few athletes, but as we get out, anyone that you want us to look forward to, you mentioned Rudy, you mentioned Justin Fonksavon.
Yeah, Justin, Trenton Merrill will be great. I think Hunter Woodhall is ready to just kill it and break every record on the planet. He's just in such a good place right now. He and Tara are just, comes as their social media, they're following, they're sponsored by Champion. They're doing great stuff. And what's cool is when Hunter, I had Hunter on my radio show a number of years ago, and he's number 5 in the country at quarter mile, number 1 in Utah, no scholarship offers, none, 0.
Right. And so T62, right? So bilateral below the knee amputee.
Yes. Yep. So anyways, had him go to my buddy Tracy Sunland, who created Rock and Roll Marathon, has a track meet at the Armory in New York. And so Hunter went back there, and New York Times did an article. How come this kid who's number 5 in a country quarter mile has not one scholarship offer? Next thing you know, he's setting up the hats in front of himself and picking Arkansas and becoming a Razorback because he had all these scholarship offers, which was awesome. And I had gone out to see Hunter when he was in Utah running in high school, and he won the quarter. And then he was going to be the anchor for the 4x1. And I'm in, I'm down by the track, and I see all this commotion in the infield. And I go over to see what's going on. He lost a bolt in his leg, and they were duct taping his leg on so that he could run the 4x1. He could anchor the 4x1, and he wins, right? With duct tape, of course. And I'm sure he's bringing duct tape with him to Tokyo, because you never know. You got to have some duct tape, because that's just the way it is. Solves everything.
Well, that is, and that's the definition of an athlete, right? If you're going to fix it, you're going to fix it with duct tape at some point in your life. This is the way it works. And Bob, thank you so much for joining us. This is a great way to lead us into the Paralympics, which will start on the 24th of August with the opening ceremonies. We'll get right into all the competition, but just to watch these athletes, and so amazing that Challenge Athletes has affected the trajectory of not only individual athletes, but a team as a whole, a country, and really the world. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Job well done. Obviously it's not done. You will continue to do it.
Just getting going, just getting started. And then we got winter coming up. We got your stuff. We got skiing coming up in Beijing. That's coming up around the corner. Watch Lyra Doderlein. That's going to be, if you don't know Lyra, she is born in Russia. She had the parents were told, because of her disability, that they couldn't afford the medical treatment for her. So they should put her up for adoption. Adopted by a family from Arizona. First 14 years of her life, she's got leg braces, arm crutches. She's hauling these legs around. The doctors finally said to her, listen, you're putting a lot of stress on your shoulders. As you get older, those legs aren't getting any lighter. So you might want to think about having them amputated. And her adopted parents were like, we would never do that. And she was like, please. So they amputated her legs. She finds in Arizona, her first sport, sled hockey, finds sled hockey in freaking Phoenix, and becomes great. They move here to San Diego. I took her to the NHL network, and we surprised her on camera with her own sled hockey sled. She's now on the U.S. developmental team for women's sled hockey. She's 18 years old. She's also on our women's hand cycling team, and she was up in Boise and up in the northwest, doing cross country skiing and Nordic skiing and biathlon. And she was invited with Oksana Masters, who's sort of her mentor, to go to Europe. And there's a good chance she's going to make the Paralympic team in biathlon or in Nordic for this January. So that's a tip for winter, is Lyra Doderlein. And then Desmond Jackson is going to be great in Tokyo and track. And I can't wait to see how Haven Shepherd does, and obviously Rudy. So it's so much good stuff. And Jamie Whitmore just got invited. We didn't think she was going to be able to go, and now she's going.
This is awesome. And it must be like watching your children to a certain extent, getting to watch these kids on TV.
Well, especially Rudy, because basically he'll send me little notes. Hey, loser, I made the Paralympic team. So, thanks, Rudy. Appreciate it.
Well, you guys helped him go to Rio, right? To get classified so that he could actually make the team.
That's a long story, but yeah, the classification thing is like finding a unicorn. I can't figure that whole process out, but he wasn't able to get, he could have gone to Texas and get classified, and they told him that, oh no, all the spots are full. And then he goes to Rio. They invite him to Rio, the hotbed of COVID, to finally get classified. And he and Jamal Hill get classified down there. And the first thing that the classifier said to him in Rio is, why didn't you come visit us in Texas? We were sitting there with nothing to do for 3 days, which I wasn't very happy about. So anyways, but it's been a long journey. But the key for Rudy, this has all been fuel. All the doubters, all the people at USA Para Swimming who wouldn't let him swim at the training center, who basically kept telling him you'll never make the team. He's just been using that as fuel to go there and get his medal on. He's going to do some good things there in Tokyo, and I can't wait to see it.
That'll be awesome. Well, thanks again for everything you're doing for everybody. Thanks for continuing to build the sport. I mean, I think that as a Paralympic athlete, we feel a sense of ownership in terms of our sport, in terms of our community. But that's exactly what you're talking about as well. It's this sense of ownership and community, and building it and growing it and telling people about it. So thank you, and continue to do the job that you're doing. And thank you for joining me as well.
Chris, thank you for one, being a legend, for everything you've done, because all the awareness you created for parasports, and for, in the Disabled Sports Hall of Fame, in the Paralympic Hall of Fame. Come on now, you're the real deal. I just get to watch you. I get to watch real athletes, and you're the real athlete.
Well, I appreciate it. And I mean, I was helped. I got a hand up to get my first monoski. My college team bought my first monoski, and that started something that nobody had any idea where it would go. But I'm so glad for that start. And that's exactly what you're doing for people, is giving them a start, giving them a hope, and allowing them to dream, which is really the important part. So
love it. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a ton. And thank you to all of you for listening in. Again, the greatest gift you can give us is to tell your friends to tune in. This will be a podcast, Apple, YouTube, Spotify, all the regular suspects. So please follow us. Please like us. We'll continue to get great guests, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So thanks a ton.